All right, guys, welcome to the MMA Fight Game Podcast. As you can see, I'm in my alternative gym studios here in Buffalo, New York. We're actually with a very, very special guest, a guy that's kind of made the news this week for really positive reasons. He has a client that just got signed to the UFC, massive, massive signing, huge bout on UFC 300. We are here with Eric Pena of Pena Performance. He's a nutrition coach for he's the nutritionist to the stars in the UFC, PFL, Bellator. His notable clients, first one that if you guys have watched the podcast, you know who it is, Yann Oliveira, who fights at Combat FC 6 on February 9th, 2024 at Joe Cavallero and Rick Caldwell's Combat FC. Eric is actually going to be out there all week, this week, maybe even into next week with Yann. So he'll be out there. We'll be talking with him live and in person because we're going to be out at Combat FC 6. If you need tickets and you don't know Yann, but you want to support Yann, hit Eric up. Eric can coordinate that for Yann. Obviously, these guys make a lot of money selling tickets. So definitely hook Yann up as well. He also is a nutrition coach to Dustin Poirier, the newly signed UFC athlete, Kayla Harrison, Shane Burgos, Ryan Spann, Jack Hermanson, Robbie Lawler, Alex Volkanovski, to name a few. The list is long and distinguished. Eric, I truly appreciate the time. How do you keep this all separated with all these stud athletes?
Thanks for having me. First of all, man. Honestly, it's a process, it's a grind, man. But when you deal with some great people, it honestly makes the time fly. It's enjoyable, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, you've been in the news. Mass sign. Not only did Kayla get signed, she got a massive bout on UFC 300 against another veteran stalwart in the division, Holly Holm, along with another one of your clients, which actually Dustin Poirier, who fights Benoit Saint Denis at UFC 300. They posted almost like an iconic picture, just two UFC fighters. That was it, and it blew up. It went viral. How cool is that? And what's the response been to having Kayla Harrison, who's just a stud MMA athlete in the UFC finally?
Yeah, man. So just first off, Dustin is actually fighting on the pay-per-view before. He's co-headlining
Oh, my
it's the
bad.
co-main event on the
My
UFC Miami 299 event.
my
Um,
bad.
no, it's all good, man. Just I don't want people to miss that fight. That's gonna be a
No.
banger.
And it's like these two events, like they correlate with everything. Obviously, we have a good friend of ours, the heavyweight Robelis de Spain, who's fighting on that card as well, making his debut. And it's like all the chatter and all that. So I get those mixed. My apologies, no
No
disrespect.
worries, man. No worries, man. Like I said, I just don't want people to miss it. That's going to be a great fight. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, Kayla's bout on UFC 300. We're super excited for her. She's a beast. She's ready to overcome any and all challenges, and we're starting with Holly Holm on April 13th.
Yeah, that's amazing. That was major news that a lot of people gravitated to as well. So obviously you're a performance coach to a lot of a nutrition coach to a lot of these high level athletes. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Did you play sports in high school, college, and really how did you get into all this?
Yeah, so it's funny, man. My journey started way back in the day. I've always been a smaller, kid. I probably didn't even hit 100 pounds until I was maybe a sophomore in high school, and I was playing football. That was my first love, tackle football, and I was just getting hurt left and right, concussions, broken bones. And my dad's like, "Hey, man, it's time to start picking on people your own size." So, sure enough, that kind of led me to wrestling, and I wrestled probably 2 or 3 years throughout high school, and that's when I first noticed that hey, there's a big need for this. Even in high school, these kids are dropping too much weight, dropping it in some extreme ways. And, again, it just kind of opened up my eyes towards it. And I headed out to Florida State. And when I was graduating, I started thinking, hey, I should really get into a niche realm. And of course, coming from a wrestling background, I followed guys like George Lockhart and Dan Leith. I reached out to them. And I was fortunate enough to go out and learn from them for a little while. I worked under them for about 3 to 4 years. We took care of, I want to say, about half the roster at of the UFC at that time, and that's not counting any Bellator and regional scene, amateur guys. So we were working with we had a lot on our plate, let's say. And yeah, man. After that, I kind of just branched off and started to realize, hey, I need to put a little more focus into some specialized names, and ever since then, man, never looked back.
Yeah, and going to that, like, what's the difference? Like, obviously, you're balancing it. What's the difference between a good weight cut for MMA and a bad weight cut?
Man, there's a lot that goes into a weight cut. So, first things first, just to clarify, there's if you're talking weight loss, you can break it down into two separate phases, let's call it, right? The chronic weight loss phase, where you're losing, let's say, slow and steady amounts of weight over time, focusing more so on keeping as much muscle and losing as much body fat as physically possible. I mean, so much can go wrong in that sense where guys are, cutting their calories too low or overtraining, under fueling, and that could open up a risk for injury. You see guys getting sick, whether it's just a common cold, flu, pneumonia, staph infections. Just so much can kind of go wrong from like I said, just under consuming and over exerting your body. And that in itself can lead you to not fighting or having a pretty crappy performance come fight night. And then the second phase of that would be the acute weight loss phase. So come fight week, where you're focused more so on manipulating water and water in and out of the body, whether that's through the reduction of sodium, carbohydrates or fiber, water loading, or, the actual process of dehydration, where you see guys stepping in the sauna, working out with a sauna suit, maybe hot baths, just essentially inducing sweat so that they're able to, again, lose those final, let's say, few pounds. I mean, that's probably the most documented in terms of things go wrong, where you see guys passing out, cramps, nausea, weight cuts getting called short and guys ended up hospitalized. Again, I would say being at a relative calorie deficit, nothing too drastic, coming into a fight week nice and loaded, whether that's with carbohydrates, sodium, fiber, all of the above, and you're still at about 8% over your targeted weight, and then again, just kind of making sure that you're putting the right protocols in place that final week to where you're able to dehydrate your body without putting too much strain on it, and then again, now we're talking rehydration, and you rehydrate properly. That's going to be best, right? If you're feeling good, you're not feeling any of those major symptoms. Again, you're working within a relative calorie deficit that's not going to be too drastic on your body. I would consider that good. Bad, I mean, it can go bad a number of ways. So,
Yeah, and then obviously, are you working with Alex Volkanovski for this weight cut? Because I've seen he's been a client in the past, right?
yeah, no, the last time I worked with Alex was UFC Edmonton. I believe Frankie Edgar fought Max Holloway, and Alex was the backup fighter.
Okay.
Ever since then, Alex has been working with a great dietitian out in Australia.
Okay.
Someone who's closer to home, time differences and all just makes it a lot easier. So, yeah, I haven't worked with Alex in a few years, but I worked with him a few times.
I got you. Yeah, because I was gonna correlate. Obviously, you have, if you were working with Volk, you have the Volk. But do you have anybody on that 298 card
298.
in Anaheim?
Anaheim. No, I'm not going out to Anaheim.
Okay. So obviously you got Dustin, and then you got Kayla, Dustin at 299 that you corrected me on. And then obviously Kayla at 300. Real off topic, what are your thought processes of the water fasting that's been popularized by the UFC CEO Dana White?
To be honest with you, I haven't looked as deep into it as I should have. Everyone's been asking me that question. To be honest with you, I don't necessarily love the topic of fasting. There's ways to do it, and if your body is, let's say, in a right place for it, then sure. I like to explain to people it's like a bank account, right? sure, if you made, let's say, if your goal is $7,000 a week, right? And you make $1,000 a day, great. You got your $7,000, you check your goal off. Now, let's say you made $2,000 on Monday and $1,000 every day off. Sure, every day thereafter, sure, you can take Sunday off, right?
Mhm.
And again, instead of money or currency, let's say, our currency is in the form of calorie intake. So sure, if your calorie balance is well within range for your weekly average, then go ahead and try it out. But again, it makes it extremely difficult, especially when you're talking mixed martial artists that are training 2-3 times
Yeah.
a day.
Mhm.
I need to make sure that they're refueling their tank, as often and as efficiently as possible. So,
Yeah. And then is there any like go-to rehydration project or like product that you use that like if they sponsor you, you're more than welcome to plug them? Is there any product that maybe people watching, maybe some amateur, obviously we're real close on the amateur scene, regional level to a degree. Is there any product, obviously, you're working with a lot of the top guys. Is there anything that that you recommend that you can give out here?
unfortunately, no, I don't recommend any specific product. I think that every weight cut is different, whether it's the same person or a different athlete, right?
Mhm.
Um, you rehydrating 10 pounds of water is totally different than rehydrating 5 pounds of water. What I recommend guys do is again, just work with somebody who's qualified, someone who's been there, and look to figure out what kind of amounts of electrolytes and carbohydrates first off the scale, along obviously with those fluids, are going to make you feel best. And then thereafter, just make sure that you're fueling your body adequately in terms of carbohydrates and lean protein, up until you step on the scale. But up until this point, no, I work with guys all over the world. Um, Sometimes products aren't available in certain parts of the world. They may be difficult to get to. I'm not sponsored by, I don't work with any supplement companies. Nor am I really in the market for working with anybody because, like I said, man, it just, in all honesty, I don't want to recommend a certain product and have a fighter, stressing and busting their head over getting that one certain product if it's not available in their area.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I didn't know if there's like obviously I've tried like Ultima for rehydration. Like I've added that. I saw Dana, I tried it. I just didn't know if there's maybe something, missing that, you can recommend, athletes grab. But I totally get that point. And obviously you don't want a conflict of interest or, anything like that, right?
Yeah, and products like Ultima are great. Again, I have to look a little further into it. I don't know if there's a third-party certification on the label, but that's one thing that I do recommend. Athletes do is first and foremost make sure that you have a third-party certification label, whether that's NSF, Informed Sport, BSGC. There's a bunch of different labels that essentially test the product and say, hey, yeah, exactly what's in this product or exactly what's labeled is in this product, and it's safe for use, in terms of, let's say, risk of tainted supplements,
Mhm.
the risk of getting something that you didn't necessarily pay for or lack thereof.
Right.
So, but now here's the difference, right? Somebody who is, let's say, sweating for more than 4 hours a day, whether that's cumulative or consecutive, maybe they need 2 packs of Ultima versus one. And again, I'm making up a random number. I don't know the sodium, the potassium, the magnesium, the different contents of what's in these different products, unless I have them right in front of me and I can read the label. But again, like I said, maybe for an athlete who dehydrated, let's say 8% of their body weight, I'd recommend 2 or 3 packets of that versus somebody who only dehydrated 3% of their body weight. Maybe they
Yeah.
only need one.
Yeah. Now, obviously, in Informed Choice, well, Informed Sport used to be Informed Choice. A company like that, Avocare, uses. Obviously, these companies spend millions of dollars to test this product, so they don't have anything. So that's why, obviously, I'm in the space to a degree, here in the real world. But I totally get, making sure that that you see a lot with these MMA athletes testing for banned substances just because of tainted supplements. I didn't Yoel Romero like just got a settlement because of a tainted supplement, which so I definitely recommend that for sure. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, you have a client, Yann Oliveira, fighting at Combat FC 6 on February 9th at Wilmington, Massachusetts. Talk to me about the process of him making 170 pounds for next week.
Yeah, so Jan and I have been working together, I would say, real diligently for the last 4 weeks. He's a busy guy. He's got a bunch on his plate. So, as of the last 4 weeks, we've really been tightening up. Everything's going smooth. We're on the slow, steady decline, that chronic weight loss phase that I was talking about
Yep.
at the moment. So, like I said, we've just been essentially adjusting his calorie intake, his overall calorie intake.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be on the expenditure side, maybe I have him walking a little extra, or having him walk a little less, having him train a little more, having him train a little less, etc. We're pretty much adjusting how much he's burning versus how much he's consuming to get him at that proper calorie deficit, so that we're able to get him within 10% of his overall weight class of the weigh-in weight. So come, let's say, Tuesday, I'm looking to get him at about 187 pounds at the most. And that's him still consuming sodium, still consuming carbohydrates, still consuming fiber, relative calorie deficit, nothing too drastic. And we're on track to hit that. Once we hit that mark, I would say Monday, Tuesday, we'll go ahead and begin to shift our focus over to that acute weight loss phase where, we'll start to pull back on his sodium, start to pull back on his carbohydrates, start to pull back on his fiber intakes, get him to lose a little bit of weight. And then the day before the weigh-ins, I'm not necessarily sure exactly what time the weigh-ins are as of yet. I'll probably figure all that out over the weekend. But we'll strategically plan it to where we're, 170 pounds at, let's say, if the weigh-in's at 11 a.m., we'll be 170 pounds at 10:30 a.m. driving over. We'll step on the scale, and as soon as he hits 170, we'll start rehydrating.
Yeah, and I mean, I went to Combat FC4. I was at Jan's fight when Yann, I think he won by submission in that fight. Going out there, I don't know what Joe and Rick have, but on weigh-in days, I thought it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in Wilmington, or maybe even sooner. So I think I might have even got there late. I think there were guys weighing in still, but I think a majority was done. So I could be wrong, but it's right around that same time frame for sure.
I can imagine, and I can imagine that it's more so based on the commission. They may have another weigh-in earlier that day or later that day. Normally, a bigger regional scene show like Combat FC will have it at the same times, but I'm just not sure, so I don't really want to speak on it yet. But we'll essentially strategically plan it so that he's on weight and dehydrated as little time as possible.
Yeah, that's great. So now I go to a little bit different of a question. So is there any noticeable differences that need to be done for a male athlete versus a female athlete in terms of making weight? Like, for example, Dustin Poirier and Yann Oliveira have certain things they need to do to make weight versus, say, Kayla Harrison and Andrea Lee that I've seen you work with. Do those, obviously being male, female, are there differences there?
Yeah, slight differences. I guess the overall process is the same.
Mhm.
Females do tend to carry a little more body fat on them naturally, as opposed to their male counterparts. So that's something that we need to account for. Just make sure that we're getting them a little closer to the weigh-in weight. The more muscle somebody has, the leaner they are, the more water that they're going to hold on to, which facilitates the ease of the cut.
Yeah.
Again, let's say males, I would aim to 8 to 10% max, about, let's say, 3 to 4 days out from the weigh-ins. And that's 10% over their weight class. Females, I try to get them within 6 to 8% of their, of the weigh-in weight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their wake-up weight, again, 3 to 4 days out from the weigh-ins. Another thing that you kind of have to account for is their menstrual cycle. Women will tend to hold on to water differently at different points of their cycle. So as long as we're keeping track of, where they're at in their cycle, and again, if they do need to auto-regulate on certain things, like let's say a water load, if it's holding on to if they're holding on to a little more weight than their male counterparts, then again, we maybe have to adjust the amount of water that they're drinking. And just certain protocols around that. But, again, as long as everything is mapped out and organized ahead of time and in advance, then we can come up with the proper strategies to, again, just make it as smooth and streamlined as possible, whether male or female.
Yeah, that's great. Now, does the menstruation cycle of a female athlete really throw things out of whack?
It depends on the female. Everybody's different, person to person. Some females may experience different premenstrual cycle symptoms,
Yep.
whether that's water retention and bloating, or mood swings, or headache. There could be so much variance from person to person. But again, that's the beauty of understanding the athlete that's in question.
Gotcha.
The longer I get to work with you, the longer I understand what you're going through, and I get to ask you the right questions so that you start understanding your body as well. But yeah, I would definitely say menstrual cycle is something that affects a lot of females, and not mostly it's in a negative in a negative way. Again,
Yeah.
whether it's just their mood swings, or the way they think, or the way their confidence, their the way they look because they're bloating, or there could be so much to it. And again, it just varies person to person. It's just important that they understand their body, and we understand where the speed bumps are so we can avoid those.
Yeah, no, that totally makes a lot of sense. And then obviously we've seen a few big misses just at the start of the year in mixed martial arts making weight recently. Do you know what those are attributed to by a chance, or is it something common? I mean, there were some big weight misses.
Yeah, man, it's common, and I never like to make any comments, or speak on something I don't know of, just because I've been there. I've been in those shoes where the athlete had a minor injury. They stepped on one of their kids' Lego toys, and now they can't run or can't walk or give that same energy expenditure as they possibly could. And unfortunately, they need the paycheck, so they're going out there. And the mind of a mixed martial artist. They're hey, if there's even an ounce of doubt in your mind, whether that's, hey, because my foot hurts, or because I'm heavy, or hey, I have to take this short notice opportunity, and I'm going to get into the UFC, and then I'll go ahead and move up, whatever it might be, right? There's so much that can go wrong in a fight camp, especially in a sport where we're trying to rip each other's limbs off, choke each other unconscious, and punch each other in the head, so yeah, I can't speak on any weight misses, for this year specifically. I don't really know. But I know that so much can go wrong, and man, they're people at the end of the day as well, and they have a life outside of fighting, just like the
Yeah.
normal Joe Schmo who's on their computer talking smack about it, and they really and truthfully have no idea what's going on. So, um, you
Yeah.
know,
That's a big thing, is like people don't know like what goes on in the weight loss. Who knows, and that's some of the reasons for the basis of my questions, is because you don't know what these athletes are going through. And it's just crazy to me that, somebody like you, if you look at your Instagram at Pena Performance, Pena Performance on Instagram, you see your clients, you could have 6 clients on a fight card, and they're all making weight. So obviously 9 of 9, I did notice that as well. So that's a tribute to you, knowing that your stuff, you do your stuff as well. Before I wrap this up, because I know you're a busy man, and I locked you down, which I appreciate. Do this. We're gonna close with this. If you could give 3 tips to any amateur or pro mixed martial artist, male or female, on making weight and having a seamless cut, what would they be?
all right. So first is going to be weight isn't everything, guys. There's a difference between weight centered goals and performance centered goals. You guys are fighters. You guys aren't professional weight makers. So again, you consume the calorie intake, the diet, the quality of food that's going to make you feel best in and out of the ring on a daily basis. Don't, just because coach tells you, hey, you're a 35 or move down to 35. Right? Because you may get sick throughout camp, you may get injured more throughout camp, and then you don't even end up fighting. Second is going to be, do your research. Don't just listen to the first Joe Schmo on Instagram that tells you to go eat carnivore or eat keto, or, hey, do this water fast. Understand what that the purpose of the, diet or what that fast or whatever stimulus you're trying to give your body, understand that and understand the pros and cons. Because most of the time on the internet, they're just listing the pros. And again, that pro might be for a lab rat, not a human being who's, training 2-3 super intense sessions a day.
Yeah.
Third is, if you have any questions or concerns, make sure you reach out to a qualified professional. Don't be afraid to, hit somebody up on Instagram. If we don't know, we certainly at least know somebody in the industry that could help. So those would be my 3 tips. And yeah, man.
Well,
Hope they enjoy it.
You have it. Obviously, we'll be seeing more of Pena Performance out in Wilmington, Massachusetts, February 9th at the massive Combat FC 6. He'll also be at UFC 299 in Miami, Florida with Dustin Poirier. Got any other clients on the 299 card?
CJ Vergara. I work with
Okay.
CJ Vergara. That's gonna be a banger of a fight as well.
Yep.
Yeah, man, I'm all over. Not just the pay-per-views. I'll be in Mexico City for the UFC Mexico City card. I've got a few on that card.
Who's on that
UFC
card?
300. So I work with Luis Rodriguez. He's going to be making his flyweight UFC debut at the same time. Chris Duncan. He's another ATT guy.
Yep.
And I'll be working with Yair Rodriguez's team. They've got Manuel Torres. They've got a few other guys on the card. So, I'll be helping them out and yeah, just supporting Latin American fighters, man.
Love it. Love it.
Those are my
Now,
guys.
does that elevation in Mexico, obviously you've heard horror stories in the media. Is that overblown, or is that elevation in Mexico a real thing?
Mexico City, I can't speak on specifically. I've never been. I've been there for a layover, so I was there for maybe an hour. I've never worked out there. I look forward to the opportunity going out there and trying that out myself. But no, man, I would definitely say it's the real deal. Now, again, whether you're able to, use mental fortitude to push through that, and forget all about the elevation. Now that's a different story. That may be, someone you'd like to talk to maybe on the psychology side of things, but science definitely says that altitude is real.
Yeah, that's great. And then obviously the massive UFC 300 newly signed Kayla Harrison's on the card. Anyone else on that card?
Not as of yet. No, I'm gonna again, it's our first time dropping down to bantamweight. I'm gonna stick with Kayla, just focus on her. And if I do get anyone else out on the card, I'll definitely bring out some help.
Awesome. That sounds good. I truly appreciate the time. I look forward to meeting you February 9th at Combat FC 6 for Yann Oliveira's massive welterweight title fight. If you need to reach out to Eric is very attentive on Instagram, responds back. Obviously, he's got a lot of clients. He has to prioritize the athletes and the fighters, and his clients come first. But if you need anything, hit Eric up at Pena Performance. Eric, I truly appreciate the time. We got this done. Just sit tight, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.